So before the video starts, I just wanted to say thank you. The first chapter, The Coming of a God, actually surpassed my up until now highest viewing video, which was that of Deathslinger when he came to the PTB, because I was like pretty early back then. And that just shows me that, especially with all the comments, with all the likes, and even some subscribers being gained, that the hours of editing and writing the chapter actually paid off. And I try to make them of a higher quality. You might notice it with the thumbnail. So I try to do what's in my power to make these chapters a higher quality from now on. And I hope you enjoy. Let's get to it. Yeah. A knock woke Emilio from his deep slumber. He had dreamed of a blue fairy that he freed from an iron cage forged by evil monks. The fairy had thanked him and granted him a wish. The wish revived his father's kingdom and kept any enemy at bay who dared to think of attacking. When Emilio was abruptly pulled from his sleep, his eyes snapped open. He knew what time it was. The young prince looked out the window and saw, in the distance, orange glowing outlines. Black smoke rose into the sky, forming a silhouette of a demonic cyclops, its eye the moon itself. In the distance, shadows moved towards the castle. Quickly, Prince Emilio put on his freshly polished shoes, ran to the door, and grabbed his servant's hand. As they reached the stairs, they rushed down, stepping only on every second step. Through a window in the lower part of the tower, Emilio saw the rising sun. No, not the sun. It was fire. Scarlet flames blazed in the villages outside the castle walls. People ran in panic. Screams shot like arrows against the walls and bounced off. The knights of the night sky had come from the east, marching on a campaign through the lands, slaughtering entire towns and sacrificing even children to a divine creature, as the heathens called him. Now they stood before his home, before the moat of Castle Lindenberg. King Constantine III was a righteous ruler, and of a combative nature when it came to protecting his homeland. Countless brutal battles had he fought personally against the enemy. His steel sword had tasted more blood than any other blade in the kingdom, but a fateful bolt struck his sword arm during the battle at the oldest linden tree. His men were defeated, and the few survivors retreated to the castle, the last bastion. Gigantic rocks flew through the darkness and struck the walls. He ran past heavily armed and well-equipped men. The women were sent to the cellar in the misguided hope that they would show mercy to the innocent and unarmed. But even the young prince knew what the knights did to the people. Another rock struck the upper part of the wall, slid over it and crashed loudly to the ground, breaking into several pieces and killing the king's horse, a dreadful omen of what awaited the remaining fighters. Then silence. A brief silence. An uncomfortable silence. Emilio wished for the sounds of war to return, but his thoughts were torn as he felt the cold of a knife blade at his neck. Loud arguments, traitorous words, loud shouting reached his young ears, triggering a whistling tone that immediately gave him a headache. The bridge lowered, pulling him back to reality. His servant held the weapon and had threatened to kill the boy if his father didn't drop the bridge and open the gate immediately. The shouting came from his father's men, but in the end his father lost his nerve and obeyed. The knights of the night sky stormed the castle and surrounded the inhabitants and foot soldiers in the blink of an eye, who then laid down their weapons. A man entered the castle yard, older than Emilio but still younger than his father. His name was Sradon, a bald Czech with disgustingly yellow teeth, and the leader of the fighters who had just reached the height of their campaign. His shameful grin was that of a monster, and Emilio's observation was only confirmed when Sradon took the knife from the servant and, while thanking the traitor, plunged it deep into the spy's stomach. "Do not," he whispered softly into the soon-to-be dead man's ear as he fell backward into the mud. The entire castle crew was dragged away. Emilio was unsure of what happened to the women in the cellar, but suspected the worst. They stopped before the moat, and the knights, swordsmen, archers, and crossbowmen of the king were forced to kneel, facing the moat. Then Zradon's executioner, known as the Bloodhound of the Czech, for his ears resembled those of a bloodhound, walked around, slitting each one's throat. The first man didn't see it coming. The second whimpered for mercy. The third accepted his fate. The fourth was treated sloppily, and he died once he hit the water. Thus the bloodhound went around, taking the lives of sons and fathers as if they were animals for slaughter. Emilio and his father were made to watch, then taken far from the castle, to the place where his father once wounded Sradon deeply, a wound he unfortunately survived. There, at the site of the war's decision, where the rotting bodies of both factions were consumed by ravens, stood an old linden tree, its branches as wide and large as no other trees. It was here that they forced Emilio to witness his father's death. He was made to tie his own noose, and as soon as it was done, he removed his armor and was hanged by Sradon himself. His legs twitched, his arms instinctively tried to remove the rope from his neck, but as his face turned blue, all involved knew it was the end for King Constantine III. Emilio was sacrificed that night to the deity of the Knights of the Night Sky in a ritual. Black fog wrapped around the prince like a serpent does to its prey and consumed him. Decades passed, and Emilio spent them in the vastness of chaos, where the worst perversion of evil desired to break his will, but he fought against it, for his father, for his own life, for his people. Minutes felt like weeks, and Emilio lost consciousness more than once from the pain under his skin, in his head, his mind, his soul. But no matter what came, the boy was not broken. The teenager was not broken either, and as he became an adult, his iron will only grew stronger. Emilio was driven by the thought of one day returning and freeing his home from Sradon's clutches. And in that moment, the fog realized the devilish offer it could present to the prince. Bloody vengeance on the murderers of his people, for eternal service. Apparently, this deity had seen a potential in him that had been seen in few others. But even then, the young prince did not yield. And so, the fog entered his mind and flooded it with billions of moments from billions of other realities where his father was executed by the very same man now sitting on the throne, spitting on the values of the late king. Images of abused peasants and tortured animals stormed through his head, and after a very, very long time, vengeance and the thirst for justice overwhelmed every other thought in Emilio's mind. A figure in black robes walked through the newly rebuilt village before Castle Lindenberg at sunset. A trail of horribly mutilated corpses led from the gate across the yard and up to the throne room. There he sat, the Czech, gorging himself on the legacy of the late king. 20 years had passed, and for 20 years he had done everything to ensure his deity was satisfied. But he acted on his own, using the manifested evil to pursue his own plans. And now, before him stood a judge. His judge. Spearheads and drawn swords pointed at the cloaked figure, whose bloody footprints had stained the stone floor. Zradon stood, holding the golden chalice of the long-dead queen, adorned with rings in his hand. The figure removed its hood and revealed its face. "I am here to claim what is mine," said Emilio in an adult voice. The Czech was visibly confused, but then he recognized that face. "The Malibrins, isn't it?" He grinned awkwardly, his teeth as yellow as ever. Emilio had changed greatly. His skin was grey, his eyes disappeared into the sockets, yet he looked as clear as when he was a child. He no longer had hair, only prominent veins that shared company with his scalp. Zradon's bloodhound whispered into his master's ear that the young prince had indeed been sacrificed to the deity. Zradon choked on his own spit, as he had already forgot. He had expected vengeance, but using the young prince as a vessel seemed absurd even to him. He ordered Emilio's immediate death, but soon had to admit that his reign was over. Emilio swung his robe off and revealed his bare body. In his chest lay an iron cage that emitted a faint blue glow. As Emilio moved his hand toward the cage, Zradon shouted at full force, "Kill him already, Virupazi!" It was already too late, as the long fingers of the judge had already opened the gate to hell. A swarm of flies descended upon the knights of the night sky, entering their helmets and devouring them alive. One squirmed on the ground, just like King Constantine III had once done while hanging from a branch. Another slammed his helmeted head against the floor as if it could end his agony. "In my eye!" he screamed, sounding like a drunk man as the flies devoured the muscles in his jaw. Zradon's right-hand man lunged at Emilio, but Emilio grabbed him by the ears and ripped them off with a swift motion. The bloodhound howled like a mangy dog, and with a mixture of rage and fear, he attacked again, and was enveloped by a snake of black fog in an instant. The massive, gaping mouth of the shadow creature devoured the bloodhound and sent him personally to hell. Finally, only Zradon remained, barely able to move, and on his throne, on King Constantine III's throne, trapped. He whimpered for mercy, just like the king's men had once whimpered for mercy. Just like Emilio had once wanted to. But mercy was a gift that had to be earned. Mercy was something that should not be granted to a monster. Death was a mercy in itself. Zradon didn't even deserve that. From the iron cage came black tentacles, fleshy and dripping with fog. They pulled at Zradon, removing his rings and fingernails with great force. When his face was right before the cage, the fog made its way into Zradon's head. the leader of the Knights of the Night Sky, who was supposed to spread chaos and terror in the name of the divine entity, now faced true fear. And Prince Emilio was his judge and executioner. The terror that had developed over thousands of generations kissed his mind with pure madness and left him a crazy and broken man, unable to see the light anymore. Emilio left the castle, looking back one last time, seeing Zradon's outstretched hand on the ground, screaming only from madness. His body was almost unharmed, but he was now trapped within himself, left to the mercy of a non-existent, merciful God. And thus ended the story of the judge, at least in this world. His end of the bargain had just begun. This chapter introduces the new killer, the judge. Notes from someone who survived an encounter read as follows. A black robe, heavily worn at the edges, envelops the figure known as the judge. Countless golden markings adorn the hood, stretching down to the legs of the robe, a language known by only a few, and fewer still are capable of reading it. The judge's face is pale, wrinkled but also eyeless. Black fog pours from the eye sockets as if flames of rage burn behind them. In his chest sits the blue glowing iron cage, with an opening that houses a piece of the pure energy of the entity, a hellish power. This is why the judge bears the mark of negation at the nape of his neck. Alongside his supernatural power, the judge wields a hammer, its construction consisting only of a metal frame, with gaps filled by a sharp-edged lattice at the hammerhead. The judge comes with the ability Supreme Court. Begin the trial in Judge mode. Switch between Judge and Executioner mode by pressing Ctrl with a 4-second cooldown after switching. Mode: Judge. In this mode, black tentacles emerge from beneath your robe, serving as enhanced legs. You gain a movement speed of 115%. Additionally, black fog covers the ground, visible only to survivors within your terror radius, and passively charges 2% of fright for every second survivors spend within your terror radius. Hold the right mouse button and then press the left mouse button to shoot 2 fly swarms, one on the left and one on the right, up to 20 meters ahead. This preparation time slows you to 90% movement speed. The swarms linger in the area for 10 seconds. Survivors directly hit by the projectiles charge 50% of fright and are injured but cannot be downed. Survivors also charge 10% of fright for every second they spend within a fly swarm. Fly swarms have a 10-second cooldown. Special effect: Fright. When fright is fully charged, affected survivors only hear muted sounds and see the world in a blur outside a 20-meter radius. Fright lasts for 60 seconds. After fright ends, survivors cannot be affected for 30 seconds through passive charging. Mode: Executioner. In Executioner mode, the black tentacles return to the iron cage and slow you to a movement speed of 110%, but reduce your terror radius by 8 meters. Hold the right mouse button to prepare a mist chain and send it up to 12 meters forward by pressing the left mouse button, which can even pass through walls. This preparation time slows you to 90% movement speed. When a survivor is chained, this grants you a 10% haste status effect until the chain breaks. Mist chains break after 3 seconds. Mist chains have a 10-second cooldown. The judge's add-ons consist of 3 different parts. those making his fly swarms more dangerous, those making fright a true terror amongst survivors, and those increasing the threat mist chains pose to his surroundings. Two of his more standout add-ons are the small maggot, which damages generators upon contact with a fly swarm projectile, and cold suckling pig, which blocks 2 random generators with repair progress for 20 seconds if a survivor is injured by fly swarms and then chained by a mist chain without a chase interruption of 10 seconds. However, even the add-on Burst Crow may pose a severe threat to survivors, as walking through lingering fly swarms grants a 10% haste status effect. Combined with Mist Chain, this will grant you 20% of total haste. Enhance your abilities ultimately with your visceral add-ons, Iridescent Chains and Black Mosquito. Iridescent Chains causes the duration of Mist Chains to permanently be extended by 0.4 seconds up to a maximum of 2 seconds for every successful hit during a chaining sequence. Meanwhile, Black Mosquito causes fly swarm projectiles to put survivors into the dying state if already injured, but extends the cooldown of fly swarm by 5 seconds. The Judge comes with 3 teachable perks, the first being Shared Punishment. When a survivor rescues another survivor from a basement hook, both suffer from the Fate-bound status effect for 40, 50 or 60 seconds. Fate-bound is a new status effect which marks the affected survivors in the hut and, upon a successful hit on each one of them, reveals the aura of the other bound survivor for 7 seconds. Survivors can only be bound to one person though. While it is a new take on aura-revealing perks as well as information perks in general, this perk also is a huge consequence for over-altruistic survivors that cannot hide after a rescue. Become stealthy with Abyss Creeping Judgement. In the basement, a hunting shrine replaces the sacrificial hooks. Bring a survivor to the basement and chain them to the shrine once to initiate a sacrifice ritual and activate the shrine. Upon activation, entering the basement grants the undetectable status effect for 25 seconds. After that, Abyss Creeping Judgement has a cooldown of 60, 50 or 40 seconds. While it is very similar to the perk we had last time, this perk doesn't just reduce your terror radius, it completely takes it and your red stain away each time you enter the basement, however at the cost of a cooldown and you having to go into the basement and not just have someone chained to it. However, again, this perk works even when nobody is currently chained in the basement. This forces survivors to truly keep away from the basement, as just a single basement hook will cause chaos. The third and last perk is called Bloody Response. Damaging a generator activates this perk. If a survivor stops the generator's regression, they suffer from a 10% hindered status effect for 5, 6 or 7 seconds. Then Bloody Response has a cooldown of 25, 20 or 15 seconds. The idea of this perk is to punish those that immediately get onto generators just as soon as you leave. Combined with perks like Dragon's Grip, this could be a deadly combo that nobody wants to be a victim of. Keep in mind that the power, the add-ons and the perks have no way of being balanced, as the numbers are sometimes too low, sometimes too high, sometimes just right enough. Without playtesting, these cannot be perfected. However, the ideas in themselves are, in my opinion, worthy of being tested, at least. As you might be interested in knowing, how does the judge kill his target if granted a Mori by the entity? Well, imagine the following. Black tentacles emerge from the cage, wrapping around the survivors' arms, forcing them to their knees. Black mist slithers like a serpent from the depths of the iron cage, making its way through the air towards the victim's face. With a single bite, the mist collides with their face. The survivor's eyes turn black as screams of madness echo through the air, for the victim has succumbed to insanity in an instant. A madness that will never kill on its own, but inflicts endless spiritual torment upon the survivor. Instead of dying at the end of this process, the survivor writhes on the ground like a fetus. There is no return from this. Last but not least, we have the map, the fallen king's courtyard in the decimated Borgo realm. After the takeover by the Knights of the Night Sky, this castle courtyard fell into ruin. The walls, once built for protection, are now riddled with holes and fragile, yet their side may still invoke a sense of claustrophobia. Chunks of broken stone from the walls have littered the courtyard, with one particularly large fragment striking the barracks of the castle guards, splitting it apart and creating several unwanted entrances and exits. Following this, the forces of the entity made their home, digging a cellar staircase into the ruins. A small shack next to the outer castle gate, including the potentially intact cellar, was spared from the destructive forces. Beside it stands an old barren tree, barely able to stand on its own. One gate leads to an escape into the castle, while the others open to the outside, where the land is scorched and barren. So this is the end for Call for Judgement, which is not one of the more recent chapters. It is still one of the more recent chapters I wrote, but it's older than the one from the last video. And this one was actually where I had the big quality jump. The ones before had some inconsistency, in my opinion, and I think I need to rework a lot of them before I put them into videos. As I said in the last video, I have a lot of them written down already, since I work on this project for multiple years already, before trying to make a video from one of them. And so I have so many different settings from the past to the future, from something more grounded to something more Lovecraftian. So how about you say, comment down below what kind of chapter you'd want to see? Worst case scenario, I don't have that yet and could at least get some inspiration for future chapters I still have to write, which is not a promise that this is going to be like the next thing I'm uploading, because it takes a lot of time to just write them down and get them to a point where I'm fine with this. Anyway, if you liked the video, leave a subscribe and a little like, and comment down below what you liked, what you maybe didn't like. We all want to learn. Basically, same procedure as in the last video. And we see each other in the next video.